Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you. Thanks for stopping by. I can't read from a written statement, right? I can I can write out my thoughts, my feelings, my beliefs, my positions, my ideas, but I can't read from a written statement. So I'm going to try and say this as well as I can, as good as I can, whatever the proper grammar is. This is not a day of celebration. I will not say that Juneteenth should be celebrated. This is a day of remembrance. This is a day of national shame. This is a day that we're reminded that from the date of the Emancipation Proclamation and the continuation of the Civil War until General Order Number 3, the people in Texas who were enslaved were not told of their freedom. And then once freedom was told, no real freedom has taken place. This is not a day of celebration. This is a day of shame and embarrassment at the failure of accountability. There was a brief period at the end of the Civil War when prosperity began to grow. And then Congress made concessions. People were stripped of representation. And Jim Crow quelled the prosperity that was being brought forth by new voices, new minds. And Jim Crow and homegrown white supremacy and redlining and redistricting and gerrymandering became the way of our nation. And the 13th Amendment said, well, you can't be a slave except when you're in prison. And now we have vast industries of privatized prisons to ensure labor and profit. This is not a day of celebration. This is a day of shame. 156 years after Juneteenth, 156 years before the United States government recognized and acknowledged the shame and embarrassment of having to go emancipate already emancipated people because an individual state thought they had sovereignty over the federal government. The federal government who creates a standard for the nation of rights and liberties. And no state can reduce those rights and liberties. No state. Even under the sovereignty of a state, no state can reduce the rights and liberties afforded by the Constitution according to the federal government. This is not a day to celebrate. This is a day to remember that accountability has not been held. We are still not holding accountability for the criminal enterprise that is the United States government. The criminal enterprise that strips sovereignty of foreign nations. The criminal enterprise that uses false claims of emergency in order to wield unconstitutional power. The criminal enterprise that will sign and release unconstitutional executive orders and have the enthusiastic enforcement followed up by ICE. The criminal enterprise that endorses, enables, and empowers the killing of citizens with no accountability. And the only thing our Congress does is procedural plotting. And the Dems say, there's nothing we can do, we're not in power. And that is a lie to you. The Dems in representation have the ability to shut Congress down. The Dems in Congress have the ability and refuse the action. If we can see town halls being canceled, citizens being carried out of town halls, citizens being, homes and lives being violated, if we can witness those things, then the government that represents us cannot claim valid representation. We are in the arena of the consent of the governed. We grant them our temporary authority as we struggle and strive to simply exist, because there's no such thing as a living wage in the United States anymore. As our safety nets are dismantled, the safety nets that we determined, we established, this is not a day of celebration. This is a day of shame. This is a day of national embarrassment. How is it that more voices are not saying these words? Because it's scary. It's scary to imagine, right? Because the imagination fills in all the empty spaces with the scariest things possible. And it is not necessary for there to be any resemblance of what happened in the 1860s. Because we are the authority. And it's not simply the fact that we are the authority. It's we are the majority. This is not a day of celebration. Juneteenth is a day of shame and embarrassment. It's a day to remember that we are still not holding accountability. Accountability has not been provided. Peace for the sake of peace is not justice. Children who are shot in their minivans. This is not justice. This is not law. And we are here. And the voices of academia and the voices of representation are not saying the things that we need to hear out loud. We have been stripped of representation from the first town hall that was canceled, from the first citizen that was carried out of a town hall. We have allowed it. And by allowing it, we enable and empower it. By enduring it, we are enabling and empowering it. And it's a scary thing to talk about because it offers many implications. But this is not a day of celebration. This is a day to remember that the 13th Amendment didn't abolish slavery, it codified it. The 13th Amendment said, well, you can't have slaves except in the case of being imprisoned. And then we have global corp garbage, privatized prisons, ensuring labor and capital profit. We do not live in a country of accountability. When Judge Boasberg said, turn those planes around, and our administration allowed Bukele to say, oops, sorry, too late. We are not living under the protections of the Constitution when homes and lives can be violated with impunity, with no recourse, with no accountability. We are not living under the protections of the Constitution if the representative occupant of the Oval Office can make false claims in order to seize unconstitutional power and then illegally wield it domestically and internationally. We are not living under the protections of the Constitution when our government can violate our homes and our lives with impunity. And we are not going to reach accountability as long as we accept sing-alongs with Jane and Bobby in response to the egregious event on the South Lawn. We are enabling and empowering it. And we are not minimizing harm by hanging in there and voting harder. Yes, if we are going to preserve our democracy, we have to fight for it. We have to engage in it. We have to participate in it. We have to register. We have to vote. We tolerate the suspension of a primary in order to accommodate redistricting ruling in the calendar year of a primary and senatorial election. We are allowing that. And by enduring it, we are enabling and empowering it. And we are extending the harm. There are many actions that we can take. There are many levers of democracy that we have not pulled yet. And being the governed, it is necessary for our consent. And our power, our right, and our authority does not end when we make that mark, when we cast that vote. That is not the end or limit of our power. It is not the end or limit of our authority. Juneteenth is not a day of celebration. I cannot, in good faith or good conscience, say to any person of color in this country, Happy Juneteenth. I'm ashamed and embarrassed that it took 156 years before our federal government said, oh yeah, that happened. We do not live in fear of what has been labeled critical race theory. Many people of this presentation live in fear of the whole history of our country. And so they prefer the softer version. And consuming and embracing the softer version, the edited version of the history of our country, perpetuates the harm. I cannot speak with enough outrage. I cannot speak with enough ferocity of outrage that the people of education who have mortgaged their lives for their education are not saying that the Constitution has been dismissed. That when Judge Boasberg said, turn those planes around, and it took more than 100 days for Kilmar to be returned to U.S. soil, never mind released from custody. I cannot speak with enough outrage and ferocity to say that we are being abused by the people who claim to be our representatives. The people that we granted temporary authority to represent us, to defend us, to ensure that all of our rights remain intact. There are no qualifiers or requirements in the word we. There is no color included in we. There is no gender included in we. There is only citizenry. There is only residence. And every time a qualifier is added, every time a definition is required, it becomes a disqualifying factor. Born here, from here. Following the process to become naturalized. I cannot speak with enough outrage or ferocity. And I cannot continue to witness sing-alongs with Jane and Bobby in response to the devastation of the people's house. The people's house. And the procedural plotting of Congress. And the 4 articles of impeachment that were submitted and quashed by Democratic representation. Submitted by Democrats, quashed by Democrats. Oh, because we can't win. We, the people, demand the recorded vote in order to hold the representation accountable, which is the purpose and function of it. Immediate right of refusal. Authority of the Constitution. The people who have mortgaged their lives for their education are not saying this. The people who fill the halls of Congress are not saying this. And that means to me that they aren't representing me. What say you? I love you. I hope you're safe. Protect each other. I'll see you next time.